Hello, Ben Garrison here, and I'm going to make a podcast, um, and I want to talk about celebrities who also create art on the side. This phenomenon isn't new. If you go back in history, you can go all the way back to the Roman Emperor Nero, who also studied painting and sculpture. And by all accounts, he was a very competent musician. And actually, history shows that he did not fiddle while Rome burned. He actually rushed back to Rome to help put the fire out and supervise it. So that was uh, kind of unfairly attributed to him. This business about him fiddling while Rome burned. And he didn't have a fiddle either. He was handy on the lyre. But he also fancied himself to be a singer. Uh, but by all accounts, though, he sang terribly. And a great many of his subjects were forced to listen to him for hours, sometimes behind locked doors. he forced his subjects to listen to him. But today I want to talk about more modern public figures who are also artists. Um, so let's start with some politicians. And it's widely known that Hitler was an artist during his early days in Vienna. And he sold hand-painted postcards as well as larger works. And he painted mostly in the architectural rendering genre. He applied to the prestigious art school in Vienna, only to be turned down a couple times because he just didn't have enough examples that showed any promise with the human figure. Uh, in fact, such figures in his paintings are mostly small props. But one of his teachers at the school was very impressed by his rendering of buildings and suggested that he go into architecture. But for that, he needed additional educational background that he lacked. So, regardless, Hitler did have talent, and it's a shame he was admitted to that art school in Vienna because the world would be quite a different place had he been accepted. Now we look at Hitler's counterpart, Churchill, who was also a talented painter, and I think he had more of a flair for art than Adolf. And here we see some of his landscapes, which display his competency and humanity. They're very easy on the eyes, aren't they? His work has what Hitler's work lacked: warmth and charm. And now we look at Prince Charles, who's also known for his ability with watercolors. He sold a great many of them, and I think he made something like £6 million doing so. A lot of that money went to charity, but my point here is if he weren't royalty, it's doubtful to me that he'd be anything more than a weekend painter who would have been lucky to sell a dozen or so at a very modest price. His watercolors they're competent, but they're nothing exceptional by any means. So aside from politicians, a great many actors and musicians fancy themselves to be artists too. And I've noticed, maybe it's just me, but I've noticed that musicians are a bit more successful with visual art than actors and comedians. Take a look at what Michael Jackson drew at the age of 9. He was a big fan of Charlie Chaplin. This is very good work for a kid his age. But now look at this junk by Red Skelton. He was a very popular comedian in his day, but his clown paintings are the penultimate in bad taste. These things, I mean, they should be in the dictionary under kitsch. And all this brings me to another comedian, and a contemporary comedian at that, and his name is Jim Carrey. I'm going to be blunt here. Carrey's fine art is painful, wincingly bad. They're the epitome of pretentiousness, and what I mean by that is he assumes he can paint compelling images without wasting a lot of time on training or studying. I don't know. Maybe he thinks he has a natural talent. But to me, he could be categorized as one of a great many posers who think they can emulate modern art because to them, perhaps modern art looks random and easy to do to their eyes. A lot of people think Picasso's work is easy to do, but it's not. It's definitely not. Picasso's work is definitely not accidental or based on any kind of randomness. His work is a result of a long journey of sensibility development, which began early in his childhood. And his work may look easy to do, but to a trained eye, well, we can see his superiority in terms of composition and color, as well as his unique vision and depth of humanity, even though in real life, Picasso was quite a stinker. There's nothing stinky about Picasso's work, though, and similarly, abstract paintings by de Kooning are based on his long experience and discipline. And he's like Picasso in a way because he was also a well-trained artist who lived and breathed art since he was a kid. And de Kooning could draw photorealistically. And if you don't believe me, look it up on the internet and you'll see examples of his photorealistic still lifes. But at the end of the day, he saw that such realistic efforts contained little art. In other words, the more realistic it got, the less art was in it. There's less meaning. It's just kind of a static, rote photographic realism. And so what he realized that such realism was very painstaking to do, but that doesn't mean it's art. Because at the end of the day, all he saw was the pain in the painstaking. But what de Kooning knew, he knew what worked and what didn't. But Jim Carrey has no such grounding or discipline. He seems to paint whatever comes to his mind and use whatever arbitrary colors are convenient. Now, I don't want to be, I don't want to discourage any amateurs. I mean, I want to encourage everybody to draw and paint and doodle. You know, it's a really good way to relax the mind and let your right brain come out and express itself. So I'm not trashing Jim Carrey for his effort necessarily. And anybody who wants to be an artist should go ahead and do it. But they should forget. What they should forget about is a lot of times artists who want to be an artist, they immediately start thinking about money and getting famous, and those are big distractions. And they often put young artists on the wrong track. But with Carrey, he's already famous for his comedy. And what bothers me here is he's using that as an easy entry into art galleries. He gets showing at prominent art galleries merely because he's a star. And there are thousands of fine artists out there who deserve gallery showings before he does. And they can't get them because, Carrey is helping to crowd them out. Yeah, this isn't fair, I know, but, that's life. So what I really want to talk about here, though, I don't want to talk about Carrey's fine art. It's bad. I mean, let's move on. I want to talk about his political cartoons. Now, I think he has garnered way too much attention for these things, and I realize I'm giving him attention as well, but I want to deliver a mini critique based on my experience as a cartoonist. Even though I wasn't, I was trained in fine art, not cartooning. I didn't take any cartooning class. I learned a lot about cartoons over the years just by trial and error. And but Carrey never went through any trial and error. He just, he must think that he has this great talent and he's automatically a cartoonist by default. He doesn't have to study, and he wouldn't listen to someone such as me. But in my opinion, he should forgo the embarrassing disaster that is his fine art and concentrate on these cartoons, because he is able to conjure up some fairly good ideas and even composition at times. But he shouldn't be showing them around yet. He really has a lot of work to do before he gets to a level where he, should be showing them to the public, in my opinion. Obviously, he's an amateur, so his work is amateurish, but at least it has some good strength. I mean, he draws in a strong manner that initially can attract, it attracts eyeballs just because of its strength. His cartoons aren't weak, and that's a good sign. But it's a kind of a strength that's, it gets your attention much like, say, a man wielding a lit stick of dynamite will get your attention. So at the end of the day, it's all still based on his stardom. Now, if he was a young man breaking to the editorial cartoon business and he was unknown, he wouldn't attract very many views or get many reposts at all, not with the quality that he's doing. His weakest cartoons are those that tend toward, they tend toward the obscene. I've drawn cartoons that are in bad taste myself, but his are often the equivalent of crude curse words. So it's the artistic form of just cussing. Just like many good authors know better words than the profane ones, artists should choose ideas above common lewdness. Carrey's messages are akin to some little kid calling the president a doo-doo head. That's to me, that's what they're equivalent to. And there's very little satire in such crude ad hominem attacks. Um, and plus, there are a great many lewd metaphors that just don't translate well into artwork. I mean, it might work for him in comedy, but when you actually see it, it's just bad taste. And here's an example of what I'm talking about here. Nobody wants to see people eating shit sandwiches. Come on, Jim. I mean, sometimes a word is worth 1,000 pictures, but not in this instance. Hey, Jim, have some taste. I mean, look at this. So his work has Jim Carrey's work has all the subtlety of an impact drill. He looks like to me he looks like he draws way too fast. He's sloppy. He's lazy. Beginning artists need to take their time and figure out what works, what doesn't. So if you draw something that doesn't look right, you keep at it until it does look right. Well, he doesn't care about that. You know, he just wants to crank them out, and it shows. I mean, his use of color is way too saturated and random. He uses he uses electric colors that really zap the eyeballs, conflicting electric colors that tire. I mean, that kind of the color schemes, they tire very quickly. They're striking at first, but then you look at them and then you don't realize, hey, I don't want to look at this. And so, yeah, he's an amateur, and he makes all the common mistakes that are common to amateurs. For example, well, let's look at how he draws the teeth. The analytical side of his brain knows that there are spaces between the teeth. So what does he do? He puts dark lines between the teeth. Why? Because he knows the lines are there. So he's drawing them, except it's wrong. He should be drawing what he sees. It's better most of the time to draw teeth as a contiguous white shape and forget the lines between the teeth. Similarly, often amateur artists often draw, say, individual eyelashes on, around the eye, because they know the eyelashes are separate. So instead of drawing what we see, they end up drawing, these individual lines, which looks bad, instead of drawing, dark shapes just above the eyes. I mean, take a look at his portrait of Melania here. I mean, to me, she's unrecognizable. I mean, she is a good-looking woman, and he ends up making her look awful. I mean, you can criticize Melania, but you got to make her look good, because she does look good. So why did he draw a thick neck full of harsh black wrinkles here? So I think he could have made her look more feminine and still gotten his point across, which I think is that she's being brainwashed by her husband, I guess. It's really not that clear. Another thing I look for when in artist drawings is their ability to draw hands. To me, that's a good kind of a measuring stick to see where they're at. And if they can't draw hands, or if they put hands in pockets, you know that they're struggling with that. And hands are very useful and expressive in cartoons. And so my hands, I'm always trying to make them. In actuality, I learned to draw hands by a cartoonist named Don Martin from Mad Magazine. This is way back when I was a kid. And he would draw these really goofy hands with the little pinky finger sticking up, and that's how I started to copy. And ever since, I've had a fascination with drawing hands. I could draw hands in any position right out of my head, but Carrey can't do that. Carrey's hands are drawn amateurishly in a clumsy manner, because Carrey himself is ham-handed, so why do you expect his fingers to be done with any level of competency? Notice how all the fingers are roughly the same length in his cartoons. They're just fat, formless gloves. And here's another cartoon showing Trump as a Roman soldier nailing Jesus to the cross. Come on, Jim, really? I mean, this is actually an effective composition, but it's just drawn badly. And here's another cartoon showing ice separating a child from her mother. Again, the hands are badly drawn. There's no creativity there at all. And the fingers, again, at the same length. There's a mysterious mouthless head that's kind of floating in the background along with the angry Statue of Liberty burning the American flag. Why? Why? Because, why is the Statue of Liberty burning the American flag? Because our rule of law is actually being enforced. So, I disagree with the cartoon. I can kind of see what he's going to say, but what he's trying to say here, and he does have some ability and talent. It's just not developed, both on the idea and on the cartooning side. Just because he's a talented comedian, doesn't automatically mean he's going to be a talented cartoonist. And cartoons and comedy, I kind of resent this a bit because people often say, cartoons have to be funny. No, and I hope Jim realizes this, that cartoons can be very effective without being funny, as long as they utilize satire and irony and, make intelligent points, strong points about what's happening. So I'm hoping Jim knows that it's not just about, cartoons aren't just there to produce a giggle like with his comedy routines. Now here's another one. Carrey drew an elephant skewering Trump's sons, who I think are fond of hunting. Actually, this isn't a bad idea if it was done with. Actually, this is a case where you should use humor, Jim. This should be done with humor and lightness instead of gore. It's very bad taste when you just have bloody gore, like what he's done here, and the elephant is badly drawn. I don't understand how he made the eyeballs vertical. Oh, I guess he couldn't fit the elephant's eyes in as they should be, so he just angled them in like this. And the background is confusing and arbitrary, and overall this drawing is like junior high level. It's not ready for prime time, like he apparently thinks he deserves. And finally, I got to mention this because Carrey was on a recent episode of The Bill Maher Show, and of course the cartoon shown here was featured prominently on the show. Maher, of course, fawned all over it because Maher has a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome. But this is one of Carrey's better cartoons. But we all know Hillary is the witch, not Trump. And it's not clear if he's melting or who the two flying monkeys are. It has the usual, electric colors, which are gobbed on with sloppy shading. Carrey has drawn Trump as a demon. He's drawn him as a witch, a vampire. He's going to run out of monsters if he keeps in this direction. But to me, this is probably one of Jim's best cartoons. And another good cartoon is shown right here. This is actually one of my favorites, and I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's because of the angle that he has. This kind of angle on a merry-go-round is I think is pretty well, this is clever, and he pulled it off fairly well. I'm not sure who the general is, but he did a good job on this one compared to a great many that he's just scrawled out. So, Jim Carrey, you have talent. It needs to be developed. Your cartoons aren't ready for the world stage. I mean, you're at the high school level at best. And if you want to get better, you have to realize that what you're doing is not good. And so that's how you get better, is you're not satisfied with what you're drawing. So I hope you're not satisfied with all this schlock that you're doing. If you want to get better, you have to start noticing that you're not a genius. And you make mistakes, you make all the usual amateur mistakes, and you need to keep drawing if you want to get better. That's the only way you're going to do it. And if you really want to make an artistic statement, stop forcing your own badly drawn art on people and instead use some of your fortune. This would be a better route to go, Jim. Just use some of your fortune to help those who are truly talented, struggling young artists and cartoonists. I mean, that's the easiest route to go, isn't it? I mean, because these people, a lot of cartoonists and artists have been drawing and painting all their lives, and they need some help. And if you really want to further the cause of art, you're the one who can help them. So what's stopping you? Anyway, that's it for now. But before I go, I need to mention that we want to invite you to our new community, and it's called the Garrison. Garrison like in fort. The Garrison is the home for MAGA patriots like you, and you'll find all of our cartoons, all of the cartoons that were too politically incorrect to publish. And so I've got some, cartoons that are going to be unique to the Garrison. Plus, we're also going to have cartoon videos and a platform that'll help fight against censorship of free speech. So on the Garrison, you can write your comments and participate. And I'll be on there to reply and have some conversations. So if you want to learn more about the Garrison, just click on the link below to learn more. Thank you very much.